Bob with the blue.
Yeah, we straight chillin', serial killing, pre-cold villains on the mic, got you reeling. 5-star rated from the floor to the ceiling. If you catch a 1-star, no time for feelings. Got a demon DJ on the ones and twos, by the name Hells Above, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roast them all over two, and prepare to hear the legend of the straight chillin' crew.
What up, nerds, and welcome to another blood-soaked episode of Straight Chilling, the weekly horror movie review show where you chill and we kill, slice, dice, and chop up yet another horror movie. My name is Bob, and I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode number 343, recorded on Thursday, October 28th, 2021. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the winner of the October poll pick, which was the original Carrie from 1976. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show. First up, calling in from Washington, D.C., we got our boy, Randy Gandy G. Landy. What's up, man?
How's it going, buddy?
Very, very well. I'm excited to talk about some dirty pillows with you.
You always are. There's something about that topic that just draws you in.
I don't know what it is.
The filthiest goddamn pillows on earth.
Next up, we got our boy Soju calling in from South Korea. What's up, man?
What up? It's your boy Cassie Stains.
Cassie. That's the titular Cassie, of course.
Yes,
It's
the
Rob,
star
it's
of
the
this
Yaboyular.
movie. Yeah.
Absolutely. Last but not least, making her triumphant return to the show, everybody welcome back Nicole from Light and Shadow Podcast. What's up, Nicole?
Not much. I'm back in the Sunshine State for a short period of time.
Just
Were
in
you at
time for
Spooky
the
Empire?
holidays.
No, I went to Halloween Horror Nights instead.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes,
Good choice.
so more on that later.
More to come.
Tackle.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sitting in with us again, Nicole. For those who might be new listeners, why don't you take a minute and just tell them about your own spooky show and where they can find you?
Sure. So I am the host of the Light and Shadow, a horror podcast, and you can find it pretty much everywhere you find your favorite podcasts. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. I also recently started a YouTube channel that specifically has storytelling episodes because most of my episodes are me just, talking about my favorite horror movies and topics in horror. But occasionally I like to do a spooky story, and so you can find me same Light and Shadow. And I actually just released one a few days ago. I recorded The Occupant of the Room by Algernon Blackwood, which is a classic horror story. So it's a pretty good one for the spooky season. So go check it out.
Awesome. Yeah. Slam it into your ear holes.
Yeah. Nicole has a very soothing voice. I do like to throw those on sometimes just to, like, when I'm walking around, kind of turn my brain off. It's really
Your
nice.
horror-themed ASMR for the day.
Yeah. It is.
Thank you.
Soothing.
Do a
Soju.
good job. Yeah.
Spooktacular ASMR.
Yeah.
Let's jump into some housekeeping real quick here. This is going to be your final reminder of our November poll pick, which is currently posted on our Patreon website. If you support us at the $5 level or above, you get the chance to vote on a movie we're talking about this November. The theme for November is Bride or Die. The 3 movies to vote between are Bride of Frankenstein, Bride of Chucky, and Bride of Reanimator.
Oh, Bob, please tell me Bride of Chucky has changed its numbers really quick.
No, bad news, man. We're probably
no.
talking about Bride of Chucky.
There was like a small group on Slack who was trying to fight the good fight. I wasn't interfering this time. I wasn't promising anything. Wasn't campaigning. I was just watching from the sidelines.
I think you've used all of your bullets on other things anyway. I think you've used
All of
every
your-
play you got.
All of your bad will is gone. You've used it up.
Yeah.
All right, then. Looks like we're talking about Bride of Chucky next month, huh?
Yeah.
You don't know what death is.
Mic drop. Make sure you get your votes in before the end of October, and we'll see what we're talking about this November. In other Patreon news, we've been dropping a brand new mini cast every Friday throughout the month of October. At the time of you listening to this podcast, you'll also be able to listen to Juice's mini cast on Don't Breathe 2. You want to tantalize the listeners real quick, Juice?
Don't breathe, Deuce.
Don't breathe the
I
deuce.
try not to as much as possible.
A couple of months ago, I had mentioned that I stumbled into the theater one day and decided to watch Don't Breathe, Deuce. And yeah, it's I've got some strong opinions on it. I believe that not everyone shares, so it might be
Like nothing I'd ever smelled before in my life.
Yeah, that's a perfect about Brandy.
Yeah.
So yes, it's the first one came out what 2014, Fede Alvarez, and he produced this one, Don't Breathe, Deuce. Maybe 2014 was Evil Dead.
That is
but whatever.
still funny. Every time you said it, it made me laugh.
You know, that's it. If memory serves, Nicole, weren't you on the episode where he covered the original Don't Breathe?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
shit.
That was
I
the
think
first time
the
I met
first
you guys.
time.
First time I was
Was
on.
it? Oh
Yep,
my
yeah.
god!
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
That's
like,
awesome.
David was even on that
Yeah.
one.
I
Yeah.
remember David
like,
coming. Yeah.
Yeah, he got the random invite. I was like, "What? You're gonna talk about a horror movie with me?"
Especially
Hey,
that one.
Yeah.
You were the filter. You could have stopped it, but no, it went ahead.
Wow,
No,
that's
I was
super
like-
it went pretty great.
throwback. What episode was that? That was like way before even 100.
I don't
wasn't
know.
it?
Yeah, that was
No.
before 100. I'm pretty sure.
Was
Or
it?
no?
What was it? I don't know. I could be wrong. I
Maybe
wanna
I
say
was.
it
Well,
Actually, you know
we'll
what?
do
No,
some
because it was
research.
after we had like lost a bunch of members. It
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
true.
just the
Yeah.
three of
So-
you for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Damn.
was early in that run though,
Yeah.
Okay.
which was about
A couple
60, I
hundred
think.
shows ago,
You've
something
been
like
hard
that.
with us for a long time, haven't you, Nicole?
I know it doesn't seem like it. Like
It doesn't.
it doesn't seem like it's been years. It seems like it's been a very short time.
Yeah,
so.
that had to be. At
Time
least, like,
flies when you're having fun,
4
I
or
guess.
5 years ago. Good
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah. Well, if you want to hear Justin's thoughts on Don't Breathe Deuce, you can check that out over on our Patreon
Every
website.
time.
That's all we got for Patreon. You guys have anything else you want to mention?
Oh, real quick, I also did a mini cast on Don't Breathe, Deuce just for Randy.
Oh, you just wanted
I
to say
just-
it one more time?
I just wanted Randy to get one more little chuckle out of it.
Oh
This-
God, yes, come with me.
This one's for Randu. All right. I think our houses are collectively clean.
His house is clean.
All right, let's get into the main event. We're talking about Carrie, and we're kicking it off for the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
All right, I do indeed have the box right here in front of me, courtesy of Scream Factory.
Bob's at 4K.
It is blue. It is a Blu-ray.
Oh, that's not good enough anymore.
I don't think it's been released on 4K. I'm sure it's a matter of time. Matter of
Okay.
time. Released in 1976 with a runtime of 1 hour and 38 minutes. This was directed by Brian De Palma. It was based on a novel by Stephen King. The screenplay was written by Lawrence D. Cohen, stars Sissy Spacek, Piper Laurie, Amy Irving, PJ Souls, a bunch of other folks. Plot synopsis is as follows. As I just said, based on the best-selling novel by Stephen King, this absolutely spellbinding horror movie has become a pervasive pop culture touchstone for anyone who's ever wanted to get even. Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie deliver Oscar-nominated performances, and John Travolta and Amy Irving are terrific in this ultimate revenge fantasy that has become one of the all-time great horror classics and is now finally offered as a definitive 2-disc collector's edition Blu-ray.
Whoa! That's the kind of stuff you don't get when you fake the back of the box.
Rob,
Bob.
That's
yeah,
right.
don't peddle your goods on our
I'm getting
segment.
Don't,
I get
don't peddle your
kickbacks.
goods on this podcast we made together. How dare you?
don't do that.
How dare you
Um,
use this for personal gain, this personal project of yours?
Right. Here come the standard weekly questions. Have you seen this movie before, and would you recommend people check it out? Nicole, you are our esteemed guest. Would you do us the honors and start?
Of course. I have seen this movie before. So many times. I don't remember the first time I saw it. I think this is one of those I just kind of grew up and it was like on. And I would absolutely recommend it. As the back of the box stated, it is a classic. I feel like this is one of those that when you're getting to know horror, you definitely need to check this off the list. I think it could also be a good gateway horror because it's not like front to back scares and horrific. It's got, a lot of decent drama. Probably not for like, younger kids because there's some sexual content, but maybe if like your tween or your teenager is starting to get interested in scary stuff, like this might be a good place to start. So definitely recommend.
Right on. Randy, how about you?
I echo all of that. This is definitely a must watch for any horror fan. I mean, if really even beyond horror fans, like this is a movie I watched with my mom. Like this is a movie that's a cultural touchstone on the level of like The Shining or like maybe I don't know. I was gonna say Star Wars, but it's kind of tough to touch that one. But it's pretty close. People know scenes from this movie even if they don't know the name of this movie. Like this is a big one, so you kind of got to see it, and it's worth watching anyway. Like it's a worthwhile film, and I don't know. I think it is. Yeah, I'll leave it there. It's worth watching for sure. Recommend.
All right, Juice.
All right, so everyone listen up. I had never seen this movie before. This is my
Yes.
first watch of Carrie ever. 7 years into a horror podcast. Never seen Carrie.
Be prepared to be bedazzled.
I know. Which we've done that a few times. I've never seen My Bloody Valentine. We covered that this year. Wicker Man covered it this year. So knocking out some big classics for me this year. I would recommend this as a first-time watcher who like watches horror like all the fucking time and everything like that. No nostalgia involved with this. This lived up to the hype for me. I was like thoroughly invested in this movie and the story and this character from beginning to end. I was really impressed with it, even though, like everyone else said, it's a big cultural thing. So like I knew the gist of like what was going to happen and, where it was headed and stuff like that. And I was still like completely engaged. Had no idea John Travolta was in this. That's how oblivious I was about
I don't think he did.
I was like, wait a second. Like when he first showed up, I was like, is that fucking John Travolta? I was like, I was like, blew me away. I had no idea. But yeah, this movie that's like considered a classic lives up to the hype. And I think that's why this is kind of like important because we always say like, oh, if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably seen Jaws or you've probably seen Friday the 13th. Here I am fucking host on here, never seen Carrie. So, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning that not everybody's seen all the classics, so yeah,
can't watch everything.
Everybody's got their gaps.
Bob, what about you? Would you recommend people check out Carrie?
Oh yeah, so I mean this one, our October poll, when the theme for that was classics, so I mean this movie is definitively a classic
because of us, because we put it on the poll.
We said it first.
It's our Oprah book club stamp that made that true.
We made it a definitive classic.
Yeah, it took till 2021 to ever be called a classic.
It's a much overlooked film, of course.
I'd only ever seen this once prior, maybe like 6 years ago or so. So I definitely came to it very late. So there's no nostalgia involved here for me at all. It's just a great movie. If you haven't seen it, definitely treat yourself to it. I don't think you'll regret it, especially if you're listening to this show. Definitely worth your time. That is a rousing recommend from all four of us. Ooh. Slam your eyeballs
deeply
into
rousing.
This movie because we're going to spoil the shit out of it. Here comes that spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning.
Alrighty. I do have the extended plot typed up.
Extended plot synopsis.
Ready
That's
to go.
a word I was not prepared to hear.
I'm actually just going to read the entire novel written by
thank you, Bob.
Stefan Kang.
I'll be back in 3 days.
I don't think it's that long. But yeah, let me blast through this plot real quick. 16-year-old Carrie White lives alone with her extremely religious mother. She is very shy and she gets bullied at school. After getting her first period in the shower at gym class, she's terrified as she has no knowledge as to what is happening to her body. Her schoolmates throw tampons at her and shout, "Plug it up." When Carrie gets home, she explains what happened to her mother, and her mother says her menstruation was brought on by sin, and she throws her in the cupboard, tells her to pray about it. Back at school, the gym teacher, Miss Collins, reprimands the girls that tormented Carrie with a week's worth of detention. Chris Hargensen, one of Carrie's bullies, walks out of detention and plans her revenge against Carrie. Meanwhile, Sue Snell, who feels badly for Carrie, asks her boyfriend Tommy to invite Carrie to the prom. Miss Collins encourages Carrie to go with him, even though she is suspicious of Sue and Tommy's motives. Sue ensures Miss Collins they just want to show Carrie a good time. Chris, plotting her vengeance, asks her boyfriend Billy to break into a local farm, kill a pig for its blood. They place a bucket full of blood in the rafters over the main stage at the gymnasium and plan to rig the votes for prom king and queen to ensure that Carrie and Tommy win and will be standing directly beneath that bucket. Back at home, Carrie explains to her mother she is going to prom with Tommy. Her mother forbids it. Carrie uses her newfound telekinetic powers to intimidate her mother. She says she's going to prom and that's that. Tommy picks Carrie up and takes her to the prom. They talk, they dance, they have a great time. I am at the end. Once they win prom king and queen, they take center stage while their classmates cheer. Sue sneezes a suspicious rope tied to the bucket of blood and tries to alert Miss Collins. Miss Collins thinks Sue's up to no good and throws her out of the dance. Chris and Billy then dump blood all over Carrie. The bucket falls and hits Tommy in the head, knocking him out. Carrie uses her powers to lock all of the doors to the gymnasium and controls a fire hose to blast her classmates. She also hoses down the lights, starting a fire. The principal is electrocuted. Miss Collins is bashed by a falling basketball hoop. Carrie slowly exits the gym while her classmates burn alive. As Carrie's walking home, Chris and Billy try to run her over. Carrie causes their car to flip and explode.
Arrivederci, baby.
Back at home, Carrie washes the blood off and asks her mom to hold her. She does, and they pray. Her mother then stabs her in the back and throws her down the stairs. Before her mother can stab her again, Carrie uses her telekinetic powers to fling several knives into her mother, crucifying her to the wall and killing her. Their house then trembles and collapses in on itself. We then cut to Sue laying flowers at a for sale sign on the lot where the house once stood. Somebody wrote, "Carrie White burns in hell" on it. And then we see a bloody arm reach out, grab Sue's arm, and then she wakes up screaming from a nightmare. Roll credits.
Randy,
All
you
right.
gotta get that sound button.
Which one?
Oh, right at the beginning, you said the chant, the taunting chant. I won't repeat.
Uh-huh.
With a great little
With,
inflection.
with just a very matter of fact inflection that made me
Well,
laugh heavily.
You're welcome.
Oh
Yep.
my lord.
You're welcome
Goodness
for that.
gracious.
Let's get into this, man. So it'd been a few years since I seen it, like I already mentioned, and I forgot like the insane amount of supposedly underage female nudity that this movie opens up. It is
Oh, yeah.
shocking.
I be stroking.
Negative. It's they're all supposedly like 16 in high school, and I don't know. The camera just lingers.
These women are clearly in their 20s.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
They're not actually 16.
I mean,
Well.
could you imagine if they went the other? Oh man, if they had like tried to age them down, or I don't know, that'd be terrible. So
yeah, it
I'm
would.
glad that they
It's
did
still-
not.
It's still awkward knowing that they are high schoolers. I don't know. It threw me off a little bit.
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole scene at the very beginning is obviously extremely traumatizing and like extremely difficult to watch, and also like the way that it's shown is like so matter of fact. Like I feel like movies are like never so bold to actually like show a woman menstruating. I feel, unless there's like obvious examples you guys can think of that I'm missing here. Like this is the one that I can think of.
Well, I mean, for that,
Especially for
era, I don't know.
1976.
I don't know. The 70s were a different time, man. I feel
Yeah,
like you
I
get a lot,
guess,
get
sure,
away
yeah.
with a lot in the 70s.
I guess.
And it's
that's true.
also it's like very kind of like softly and beautifully shot.
Mhm.
Like like I said, I've seen this a bunch of times, but just watching it with like a closer, more analytical eye, I thought that whole opening was like really beautiful and pretty tastefully handled. So I did appreciate that.
And
I
not just
did too.
that, Nicole. That's a good point, because the thought that I had when that scene, it is like soft and like the way the lighting's done, but also in just her body movements. There was a movie we watched, I feel like within the past 2 months, and I watched it. Oh, it was Jacko, I think, because Alice was like, "Who really showers like that?" or whatever. Where
Nobody,
they have
yeah.
a scene where she's just like soaping her boobs over and over again, and I kind of had this thought a little bit where I was like, they're making this almost like it's soft, but it's also kind of very sensual, and it's a great lead in to the menstruation scene, because it's like, you're here for the yabos, huh? Well, here's something you don't get when you normally get the yabo scene. So I was like, oh, that was pretty clever, like switcheroo there.
Yes, an old switcheroo.
That's what I was
The
thinking. I was
You don't
like,
get the whole picture,
old
not just
bait.
part of it.
Yeah.
Get
True.
the whole picture.
But yeah, I mean, I thought that scene was really like, this movie is clearly, like, having seen it many times at this point, it's clearly like saying a lot about being a pubescent girl. Like it has a lot to say about that, or at least it's angling at those things. I have never read the novel, but I imagine that there's similar things going on in that, and it's just, it intertwines right from the beginning. It's about sexuality and sort of loss of innocence, or like, I don't know how you would put this, but sort of formaldehyded like innocence that's last outstayed how long it should be there. You know what I mean? Because she's a overly protected person by her mother. She's hyper protected by her mom, who also has like an insane religious bent against the idea of any kind of sexuality whatsoever in a woman. So I mean,
even
the
in a
whole thing
natural
is about that.
sense.
Yeah,
where,
even in
it
like
has
even in
nothing
the
to do with
even in her
sexuality.
own daughter's
Yeah.
existence, she's
Yeah.
conflicted about it. So, I mean, it's an interesting, like, it's interesting that it starts off with this sort of like very baseline, like, yes, young womanhood, sexuality's blooming, and period happens, and then like this thing that is actually part of a beautiful system of humanity is then immediately shamed and treated as an evil by people who embrace it, which is her classmates, and then eventually by her own mother. So I don't know.
Dude, that
Also-
opening scene was traumatizing for me. Or like, I mean, it was just like I was like kind of blown away by it, honestly. Like with her cowering in the corner, or no, first when she's like running at people, she's got the blood all over her. I like felt so bad for her. Then when she's like so scared, she does a fucking amazing job. And then she's like cowering in the corner, and like these girls are just, this opening scene like blew me away. I was so surprised at just the trauma I felt and saw, and the performances that were given. It's
a very brutal scene.
good,
I think
yeah.
like you'd have to be pretty craven to not watch that, and not like might be instantly in Carrie's corner. Like this movie does a great job of building you into her and her point of view right out of the
It
gate.
also ties together, like, right from the start, all the themes that the movie's going to play with, like for the runtime of the movie. Basically, you've got her coming into her own womanhood, the bullying, and then like a direct result of her being bullied is where she feels sort of so overwhelmed that she accesses her telekinetic powers, as far as we're aware, for the first time. So like her womanhood and like the insane amount of bullying, like the trauma from the bullying, like the combination of all that sort of unlocks this power that she has, and sort of like becomes familiar with it throughout the rest of the movie. And it seems like for the most part she's like actually a really level-headed teenager. Like, even though she knows she's got this power that nobody else around her has, and she can do whatever she wants, she can move things with her mind, but she's got this level head to where like she only really uses it like when her mother is flying off the handle and she needs to like subdue her, or she's being like, at the end covered in pig's blood and like absolutely humiliated. Like, I don't think anybody could really handle that very well. And it almost seems at that point that she's not in like full control of her powers. She's almost just sort of like disassociating, and it's just she's naturally doing it at the end. I don't know if maybe you guys read that differently, but I like how like right from go, like all of these different themes are like laid out before you, and you get to watch them develop throughout the runtime of the movie.
This movie kind of does. I mean, for those who have seen Silent Night, Deadly Night, which I know we all have, I think Nicole, you've seen it, yes?
I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, please watch
It's
it.
tough.
But it's kind of
a tough
like
watch.
one thing I bring that up. Yeah, I bring that up. I love that movie, but this movie does something that movie attempts poorly, which is to sort of build in, like sort of like every road leads to this moment, right? Like every single event that happens in this movie is all pivoting and just colliding into this central point moment. And that's what that movie tried to do, but it did it really badly. It was very obvious that they were like faking traumas. The performances weren't good enough to sell it. This movie does it does that with such amazing capability. Like you're instantly in her corner. Like this is, and it also feels grounded enough, especially in those first scenes to where it's like, yeah, a teenage girl's locker room might break out into some awful shit. Like teenagers are awful in general. Like they can be awful to each other, I should say. So like, I don't know. I just want to praise it for that. Honestly, I just kind of want to gush about how good that is. Like that there doesn't seem like there's a lot of fluff in this, and the fluff that they do have is stuff that I will critique this movie on for, which is kind of the De Palma stuff where they're like hunting for dresses and stuff and like doing like the crazy split screens. Is like that's the part of the movie that always distracts me because it always feels like it's like the most aggressively 70s part of any movie I've ever seen. Like it's just hyper 70s. It feels like a scene out of The Love Boat more than a movie. Like I don't know. Did anybody else get that impression from those? Was it distracting to you at all? Because most people don't seem to bring that up.
I actually thought it was kind of endearing, like when the boys are shopping for tuxes and stuff. I mean, it was definitely it was goofy compared to the tone of the rest of the movie, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I do really like Tommy Ross, and like he seems like a genuinely just like good guy. I don't know, just like him hanging out with his friends and them talking about like, well, you don't have to get the ruffles, and he's like, I don't know, it wouldn't look good in a tux. I don't know. Even though it was goofy, it was kind of charming for me.
I completely agree because I even agree about Tommy knowing like the like the where this movie was headed, but not knowing the finer details. I was trying to get a handle on it. You know, it's like, is he in on it? Is Sue in on it? What are their like real intentions and stuff like that? But I couldn't help that actor just seems like a genuinely good dude, or he just seems like a fun kind of guy or whatever. And I liked them. I found it very funny, like them going to look for the tuxes and the ruffles and him ending up with the t-shirt and stuff like that. I liked those. I don't know, I like those pieces too. I also found them like quite endearing for just like this teenage like situation. I don't know. I liked it.
I liked it with the exception of that like 5 seconds where they literally fast forward the conversation within the movie.
Oh yeah,
that
feels very Bye Bye
choice.
Birdie to me. Like it feels like a scene out of fucking West Side Story or some shit instead of like a fucking I don't know, a horror film. I don't know. I feel like I'm splitting hairs with it though, because it's really not that big of a deal.
Since you bring up like West Side Story or something like that, I like that too, because some of the things that they try to do in the upcoming scenes, so like establishing that almost like little tone shift, is this like brilliant to me way that they set the prom up where it is this fine line between like, it's like this weird tension between a dreamlike state of where she's like in this euphoric state where she thinks like this is real and like this is really happening to me, versus the audience knowing shit's going down and bad things are happening. So like once they finally get to that once they get to the prom and they do that twirling scene comes to mind.
Oh my God, yeah.
Where it like creates this image, like the stuff you see behind them, it's like the lights and the stars, and it's like if you see it from her mind, it's like, oh, I'm like dancing on the sky or whatever, like I'm feeling euphoric, almost drunk like state of happiness, and they're dancing. But from an audience member, it's sickening, like from an actual visual state, because like
Mhm.
you don't want to watch a movie like that. You start to get dizzy, you start to get motion sickness. And it is that very fine line between like we know and she doesn't. And so I like that kind of even like tension between like, oh, West Side Story, because that's what she wants it to be. You know, she wants it
Right.
to be this romantic thing, but we know like all the details. We know about her mom, we know about, you know,
Yeah.
this girl setting up this plot and all this like sick shit going on. So I like that. I think that even adds to it, you bringing up like, oh, it's kind of like West Side Story. Like I think that even adds even more of that tension there, and I like it.
See, I mean, I don't have any problem at all. In fact, I love like that dancing. Everything that happens at the prom is A+ material as far as I'm concerned. But like, it's really just like the interstitial stuff, like the sped up voices, and like just sort of like maybe it may have something to do with the fact that these are techniques that are now seen as more humorous. Like nobody does these in a dramatic film anymore for the most part, and I don't know that it serves enough of a purpose for me to feel not annoyed by it and not like like this feels like it feels like hack writing, which I know it's not because it was seminal in that like it was this is like the movie that did that, you know what I mean? This is the director that did those sorts of things. So I don't know, I can't be too hard on it, but I'd be lying if I said that it, like, at least in some of those they're trying to go for slice of life stuff and it really feels like something out of an entirely different movie, which I understand what you're saying, but to me it doesn't feel like it's a counterpoint. It feels like a distraction. That's just my personal feeling on it.
I love the split screen that he does at the end. Apparently, in the original like cut, he used it a lot more, and I think it probably was distracting, so he pared it back. And but he used it like maybe twice or something in the prom sequence. Oh, that was a really nice touch because you get to see like the look on Carrie's face as she's processing everything, and then also like people reacting to realizing that they're fucked. Basically, they're gonna die. So that juxtaposition is nice, and I'm glad that he kind of pared that back a little bit. I don't know. I think there's another theme throughout this movie it's touched on primarily with the character of the mother. The mother is sort of fascinating.
Dude.
Piper Laurie gives a wonderful performance.
Best
But, like,
performance in the movie.
She
Yeah,
like
IMO.
she touches on like I guess Christianity sort of like demonizing sexuality. Like she calls her daughter impure, and like she must have began menstruating because she had impure thoughts, and she cites some like Bible verses about how like Eve was given the curse and then was also cursed with like having to bear a child, and apparently like none of that is actually from the Bible at all. Like the mother was just making it up as she was tormenting her daughter, which is sort of wild to find out. But like, so they're sort of like playing with that theme with like, sexuality not really having a place in Christianity. It's sort of like shunned in one way or another. But also like her mother is a straight up like psychotic. Like she's making this up and she tries to murder her daughter for going to prom. Like it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I thought the relationship between the two of them is always fascinating, but one thing that I noticed this time that I haven't really noticed before is just really how practical and level-headed and in control Carrie actually is, because she's been treated like this and talked to her whole life this way. I can't believe she's even capable of telling her mom, I want to be a whole person. It's not too late for me. I need to be around people. And then even when her mom says no, and she shuts her down and she said, I'm going to the prom. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I was like,
damn.
Wow.
Yeah,
we feel sorry for her because of how she's treated, but I'm also in her corner because I'm like, she must be so smart and tough to be able to stand up to her mom this way. And it just struck me as more powerful this time than before.
I completely agree. I had the same reaction this time around where it was like, I like you think of Carrie and I think of like when I think about her in the abstract as, having not seen the movie in a while or whatever, I think about her like being taunted, being belittled, being locked in a room and forced to pray and being beaten and all these things. and you think of her as like a meek person that has no control over life. But that's only half true. When she actually does start discovering her power, she starts exerting it and starts using it to her benefit, not like wildly. She doesn't overdo it, at least not at first. She uses it very sparingly, and she uses it for things that should have been, for justice, really, for like just purposes. And you really want to be in her corner for it. Like, it's somebody just literally discovering their power, discovering their womanhood, and all this stuff that has been kept from her and tried to be removed from her by her own mother. Like, that's really powerful shit. Like, I don't know. And like, the relationship they have is all about Piper Laurie hating herself because of her religious beliefs. Like, nothing about this has anything to do with Carrie. She sees Carrie as the result of her own sin, and so she treats her like she would treat her own sin, which is, I need this to be eradicated. I have to clean this mess. I don't know. I came from an evangelical upbringing, so like, I didn't see anybody like this firsthand, obviously, but like, there's people that think this way in certain circles of evangelical America. That is, and beyond, I'm sure. Where it's,
Amen.
Randy, did you have a prayer closet? Were you allowed to show off your dirty pillows?
My prayer closet turned into something else real quick.
Damn.
I agree about like Carrie not necessarily being just like meek. I made her more sympathetic to me once these moments started happening, because I was like, she's completely self-aware. Like, the little lines of dialogue she says make me go back to kind of the beginning scenes of the film and think like, oh God, I feel even worse for her, saying things like, we see this scene where her mom shows up like at the neighbor's house, and like, it seems like she's completely aware of not like of the status of her mother and her in society, like her saying, I want to be a whole person. Even just her saying like, their breasts, mother, every woman has them, but all those things. Then it's just like, even when the coach is talking to her and she's like, oh, somebody invited you to the prom or whatever, and she's like, they're just trying to trick me. Like, knowing that she's completely self-aware of everything, of the way her mother treats her is not normal, that like, she can't do anything about how she's treated at school. Even like her saying like, why didn't you tell me about this, mom? Like man, every moment like of this movie, I just feel so bad for her. And that's very interesting, because then I get to the end of this film and I was pausing like, who is the villain of this film? Because Carrie, this iconic image of her with the blood, and oh, Carrie, she wreaks havoc and she kills all these people, and like, that's the legacy that it carries. But when I'm done with this, I'm like, who's the villain?
The villain's an abstract.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a person, I don't think.
Yeah. It's just very interesting.
When all that stuff, I think, sorry, Bob.
No, go ahead.
Shut up,
all
Bob.
that stuff kind of adds up to me, to make this read almost like a Shakespearean tragedy, kind of, because kind of like you were saying, Randy, how everything kind of builds to that one moment. It's like, we know she's mistreated, but we watch her stand up for herself. And then when she gets to prom with Tommy, like, all of his friends are trying to be nice to her. And it's like, really, most of the group at that point is on board, and you get this feeling that like, if Chris hadn't pulled this prank, maybe after this night Carrie would have started to make friends and people would have started to see her differently. So the fact that this one little thing at just the wrong moment like wrecked it all, I was like, oh, that's so tragic. And yeah, I was like, Carrie is this horror icon and she's scary. And I'm like, she's not really. I mean, she's sad and sympathetic more than anything.
Only if you fuck with her.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely identify with Carrie all the way throughout the end of this movie, when she is killing, dozens and dozens of people. I think it's safe to say, even with her newfound telekinetic powers, that if it hadn't been for Sue, Billy, and her mother trying to murder her at the end, she would have come out of this totally fine, like a normal person, and probably never would have hurt anybody, unless they threatened her life again later down the line. But yeah, she's surprisingly well adjusted.
This is I've seen this movie many times. I watched it pretty recently, like last week or something. And because of that, I didn't rewatch it for tonight's episode, but I did, as just a quick refresher, watch a first time reaction video. I do that from time to time ever since the pandemic. I enjoy those things. I'm sorry. It's the lowest common denominator and I love it. But I watched this girl, Alonda Parker, watch this movie, and she's been watching all these horror movies. And I was like, okay, well, I'm watching Carrie. This will be a nice refresher for me. And her reaction was really interesting to me because it showed her, like, first of all, she didn't have any idea that Tommy and
Sue.
Tommy and Sue were on the level. She thought that they were part of the thing. And then, like, right at the end, she had her mind fucking blown. And I was like, I wonder how many people felt that way. Even this is a person that knew very well. Yeah, you did. Okay. So, like, this is like I know that it's like supposed to be in question, but to me, I guess because I've seen it so much, it seems so natural to me. Like, oh yeah, like I watch it every time and I look for them being like regretful and, on the level and everything. But like the whole thing that happens at the end, I was watching this happen and I was watching this woman react to this. And I was like, you know what? Carrie doesn't know this. Never really thought about it, but she thinks she was invited here for this purpose. So when Tommy gets his ass knocked out, like there is literally nobody left in her corner at that point. And the worst thing of all is that literally everything her mother has said about all of this comes 100% true. And the only thing she can do is like wig the fuck out. And she has this psychotic break, which, it's hard to blame her for. But at the same time, she's like murdering a whole school full of people, most of which did nothing wrong, and like with the exception of laughing, which was wrong. Like, and most people, I would say, I don't even think half the room was laughing. It was mostly just ball cap chick and like a couple others.
Yeah, I think some of that stuff was in her head because, like, when it showed us the shot of Miss Collins, the gym teacher, laughing at her, like that definitely wasn't real because when it first happens, she's very concerned. So it's almost like, like you said, she has a psychotic break and all she can see is
red.
That's all she can see. She can only see like negative. She can't even see the people that are in her corner.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is like what you were saying earlier, Justin, about what was it? You were saying something about the way that she reacted to Miss Collins saying, "Oh, isn't it great? You can go out with Tommy. That sounds great." And she's like, "They're just doing it to trick me." That was her mother too. Like her entire attitude, everything about this girl is entirely tainted by what her mother thinks she is and the way that her mother treats her. And it's so interesting to me to see that play out in real time because I've seen people stunted by like not just religious beliefs, but insane beliefs that their parents have. And I think we all probably have grown up with at least one person who went way off the deep end, not with psychotic fucking murderous telekinesis necessarily, but people that wound up really damaged. And that's kind of what this movie is too. It's both a movie about general trauma, about religious trauma, about coming of age, and it's a movie about parenthood and parents and children and how one person's damage infects the next. I don't know. It's got a lot going for it, this movie.
So I was definitely questioning Tommy and Sue's motives throughout the movie as well, because like the concept is a little bit bizarre to me that like these people who are definitely dating in a relationship decide that they are like comfortable enough for like Tommy to take Carrie out to the prom. And it's like, it's just sort of a bizarre situation. Like they both want to help this girl out enough for Sue to be like, yeah, I'll sit the prom out, whatever, you go ahead and take Carrie. It's like, I'd be questioning their motives as well. Like they are just that wholesome and like, they care about Carrie that much. It's like kind of mind blowing to consider. And then also on the polar opposite with what's their fucking name? Chris and Billy. Yeah.
Chris and Travolta.
Like, where their whole relationship is just sort of mind blowing to me. Like they are in a horrible relationship. Like freaking Travolta is slapping Chris and Chris keeps calling him a dumb shit. And like she's in the middle of like going down on him and like as she's doing so, she's like, I hate Carrie White. You gotta do me a favor. Like what a bizarre sequence of events, like manipulating your boyfriend sexually to go kill a pig. This teenager goes to kill a pig and take its blood. Like the hatred is like mind blowing. Yeah, it's wild.
What's interesting, and like to again that lends itself to what I was saying before, I think, is that on the opposite side, I think like Carrie's mother built this worldview around something, and that was as an antithesis to people like Chris and John Travolta in this movie. And like they serve the purpose of, like it's their hatred and their genuine like evil and malice that they have. And her, like she uses her sexuality to get this evil thing to happen. So sexuality is can be used for good or for bad. And if you are sheltered enough, you can have a skewed understanding of what that means and have not know how to handle when bad things happen to you. I think that is just another level of this. Like it adds a lot to this conversation, honestly.
So actually, one of my biggest critiques of this film is kind of what we've touched on a little bit. Bob brought it up, but the Sue. So since this was my first watch, the Sue and Tommy, like being skeptical of them, seeing how it played out, especially with the gym teacher being involved, I don't like this point of the story. Because I was watching it too, and I had no idea, and I thought I was blown that they weren't involved. I was like blown away.
You were blown?
I was blown.
Ooh.
I was blown away that they were that they weren't.
You have to kill a pig for that?
Yeah, that they weren't involved because, okay, like I understand the general motivations. We want to include her, and it was like kind of working or whatever. The problems I have is though, like what happens when prom is finished? Like Tommy kissed her, and like you can't, that's not, especially with the gym teacher being involved and like speaking to them and saying like even saying like you can't manipulate someone's emotions like that. Even if you have good intentions, you can't just be like, I'm going to take you out and make a magical moment and kiss you and then go back to my girlfriend the next night and be like, hey, come join our gang, come hang out with our friends. Like, that's not okay. And that's why I was like, as it kept progressing to the point of the kiss, I was like, they can't be good. Like, they can't be okay, because even if it played out in a nice way, if they aren't involved in the blood, that's still really fucked up. That's not okay for the development of this girl who's because then even if it just plays out, it's like you have a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Well, that
you weren't really interested in her.
That leads us to an important question that I have always had about the way this scene in particular was shot. I have read the book. I don't remember if I had this question in the book, but like, is Tommy interested in her? Because at first it just seems like, oh, are you having a nice time? And he's being kind to her. But then at some point, I guess it's about the time that the room starts spinning and everything, it starts to feel like he's sort of into her. And I was like, I've always wondered, like, is he starting to kind of fall for her a little bit? And that's why it feels that way.
I think it's possible, but like I'm so glad that this whole conversation came up, because that is true. Like the whole thing Justin just said is true, but yeah, this is like, he does sort of like teeter on that line, but it's also during scenes that are extremely heightened in what I would consider to be Carrie's point of view. So I think it's maybe that, like, it's almost like his guardedness is a reaction, or I'm sorry, our perceptions of him is a reaction to her guardedness towards him, maybe a little bit. And then when that sort of drops away and she's fully embracing and just fully buying into the magical moment, that's when things feel the most right. They feel most Disney princess, like this is what she always wanted. It turns out it's true. And maybe she has a future with this guy. But I totally agree with you too, Justin, because I don't think that whatever he actually feels for her at this point, which to my mind is probably something akin to like general like, not necessarily, like romantic interest, but a genuine like, and he wants her to do well, like you would for anybody, really. Like anybody you see being treated badly, because he has sympathy for her. You know what I mean? It's a sympathetic thing for sure, I think. But like, no matter any of that, it really is just comes down to her and like what she, yeah, I don't know what her perception is at any given time. You know what I mean? I think that's really what it is.
And also
me.
too, like the character of Sue was kind of, once I discovered like what was happening and her involvement in the ending of this film and how I was like let down by that, because I was like, I feel like I don't really know this character. And for her to make the leap of, I'm not going to go to my senior prom and I'm not in on this, and I'm going to have my boyfriend go with this girl and I'm going to feel all this sympathy. I never felt or saw that. It was almost them saying like, you have to accept that this is who this character is. I never at any point, like, yeah, she kind of tells Chris off at one point, but other than that, I was like, what? They're rooting too much in this character of Sue that I haven't actually seen.
I think they want you to question her motives. If they gave you too much information, then you wouldn't do that. So there's no surprise.
I do too, but I guess
saying,
making her this pivotal character at the end, even of like, oh, she's the one who's so traumatized, and we see her. I'm like, I barely know this character, and
she's the only one left.
Yeah,
I think that she's like, I don't know. I think a second watch would do you good, honestly, because and watching it, knowing what you know now, because honestly, like every time I watch it, I see her go. Even in the first scene, you can see her go from gleefully mean to, oh fuck, what am I doing? It's for her. It's a coming of age story for this girl too, in my opinion, where she is going from like just, you know, going with the gang, doing whatever, you know, just childishness really, to being a thoughtful person who's considerate, but it's still mixed with a healthy dose of naivety. And that's how I see the whole thing with Tommy, is like she sees this as a way of getting back, but it's completely without foresight for what you're saying. Like, because at the end of the day, either they're going to have a love triangle situation, which I know she doesn't want.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody expects, or Carrie's left high and dry with this one magical moment that's still tainted for her because it turned out to be based on a lie. But she does, like, this is also like, if you're taking this as like newly pubescent, in some cases teenagers, that makes sense that a child might be that naive and might be that guilt-ridden about this bad thing that they've done because they're discovering that morality in themselves.
It would, except for the discussion with the coach, which I think is the problem I have with it. If she, like, she's an adult and she's sitting there saying, she's thinking they're tricking her, and she's saying like, you can't do this, you can't be cruel, you can't do this. And even if so they say, no, coach, please believe us, we're trying to do good. As an adult, you would say that's still not okay.
Yeah.
Like,
and she
that's I mean, I agree.
Ultimately, the coach can't really tell them what to do though. So they just, and they basically say that. Yeah.
And that's the thing, oversteps like crazy.
Oh my God.
This movie. She like inserts herself in their lives so hardcore. And on top of that, she's out here like slapping every fucking 16-year-old girl in the mouth. She's fine.
Can I tell you?
Nuts. Yeah.
This girl, Alonda Parker, who I watched like experience this movie for the first time, referred to her as Coach Smack a Bitch, and I laughed so fucking hard at that because she hits like 3 kids in this movie.
Man, it's so inappropriate. But when she slaps Chris, I was like, oh yes,
that's bad, but
he
it's
deserved
real good.
it.
I was like, am I just becoming so crusty and old that I was just like, the most relatable character was this coach who was just like, fuck you kids, bah, bah, bah. And I was like, yeah, this is the person I relate to the most.
Yeah.
I'm not putting up with any of this bullshit.
I kept thinking like, she is getting her ass fired.
But to your point, Justin, like, yeah, that scene, that's the scene I always struggle through too, for that reason. But the thing about it that kind of keeps me from like completely souring on it is that I think it makes sense for the coach's character. I was glad to see the coach go and like confront this, because in my mind it's like, this is the person that's trying to protect them. If that's really true, she'll go confront these people directly. She doesn't want to say that to Carrie. I understand that, and I just like the way that turned out on her end. But you're right to think like these kids, naivety doesn't completely explain it. It's also headstrong, which could be chalked up to childishness too, but it's a bigger leap than just naivety. So yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Speaking of Chris too, like I loved her character. Like I loved to hate her. She was so great, and like also I can't remember her name in real life,
Is it
but
PJ?
I got it.
no, it's not
Is it?
PJ Souls.
I got it.
I always-
It is, what's her name? Chris is Nancy Allen.
Nancy Allen. Okay, so she's been
Nancy,
in several horror movies, but I think she's very young in this movie, and I was like, she's just so beautiful, and she has this just gorgeous 70s hair. I mean, she just looks the part and is just so hateable. Like I really like all the characters in this movie, even the villains. Like I feel like there's a little bit you can like feel a little bit of a backstory and like there's reasons why these people ended up this way. And I'm fascinated, even
See-
with the jackasses in this movie.
I saw an interview with her. I might have been in one of those In Search of Dark. No, because that was 80s. I don't know. I saw an interview with her with Chris or with Nancy Allen, who played Chris, and she said something to the effect of, people treat me like I was the villain of that movie. I'm not the villain of that movie. And it's like, I mean, you kind of were. You kind of
Travolta,
manipulate.
like-
You blew a guy so he'd kill a pig so you could dump it on an abused child. I
Travolta's
don't know.
character is a piece of shit in this movie too. He's like
Mhm.
cruising down the street, like chugging a beer. He's spilling it all over himself, and then he throws it across the lap of Chris when a cop rolls by. And then she calls him a dumb shit, and he just like slaps her in the mouth. Like
Dude, yeah.
everybody's getting slapped by everybody in this movie.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lint liquor?
One thing I
Thank
like,
you.
or one thing I found funny about this movie, which is the same thing that The Simpsons do. So I'm going to point this out since we covered Simpsons last week, is anyone who's supposed to be perceived as stupid has a noticeably thick Southern accent. Which is something anytime the Simpsons like they imagine their life in the future, but they're worse off, like I wash myself with a rag on a stick or whatever, is they're always talking in thick Southern accents. And in this one, Travolta has like a noticeably weird, like terrible, but Southern accent. Carrie has like a noticeably Southern accent, and her mom does too, but nobody else in the town does. So it's like,
You know,
Don't like that.
yeah, that's
Can
a
we
pretty,
go-
I think
yeah,
that's a pretty
yeah.
common thing in just
Oh,
general
yeah.
like media, where it's like, oh, you want to show somebody stupid or somebody's like not, like up to
Oh.
the standards of everyone, just give them a Southern accent.
Carrie is not stupid at all in this movie. though.
She's
No.
not, but
Yeah.
but when you're
But she's
getting
not, like-
introduced to her, you're like, at first she comes off as like
She's not knowledgeable
simple
of
and
the
stuff
world.
like that. Yeah, yeah.
Sheltered as
she's
hell.
very
yeah.
naive and
Yeah.
sheltered as shit.
So
yeah.
they
and
want you to think
Sheltered
her
hell.
perception of her
Sheltered hell.
is
Sheltered
as
hell.
being stupid or whatever.
Yeah, and then she
I
fucks
love-
it up. Fucks it all up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I love Piper Laurie in this fucking movie. Like, speaking of performances, Piper Laurie is fucking phenomenal in this
Wait, who's
goddamn
that?
role. That's her mom.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just so good. Like, she uses like Southern Baptist cadence in all of her speeches. It's all fire and brimstone. Like I've seen Manic Street preachers like that, not the band, that talk like that and do all kinds of crazy shit like that. And it's, man, I just gotta give it up over and over and over
Mhm.
again for her, because it's so engrossing to me and it hits a lot of like personal trigger points, I guess. I don't know. I just love it. I really want to
love
keep calling her out.
the moment where she's at Mrs. Snell, Sue's mom's house, and she's trying to like
Mm.
give her the tract about teenagers for Jesus or whatever. And Mrs. Snell just gives her the money. She's like, "Oh, I want to give you a donation." And Mrs. White knows that, oh, this is go away money, and she just like
Yeah.
turns around and opens up her little box and like puts
She
the money in
takes
there
it.
and slams the little box.
Yeah.
Like I loved that moment. That was like so passive aggressively like, fine, you don't want to hear about
That's the
Jesus?
only passive aggression that she shows, though. Everything else is pretty outward aggression, which I
Oh,
was
yeah.
thinking about this movie in relation to the show Midnight Mass that came out this year. And like,
Mm.
there's a character in that, for those, I don't want to do it like, it's not a big spoiler or anything, but there's a character who's very like not a good person, a piece of shit really, who also is heavily into espousing the faith. And that's I what I noticed about that is like, there's a noticeable difference in cadence in that show. That person is incredibly passive aggressive, and that's where most of her power comes from. But in this movie, it's because we see her mostly with Carrie, it's a very insular life. She just she's buck wild with Carrie. She's a little bit more like passive with other people because she needs to get by in the world, I suppose. But I just noticed how like starkly that contrasted to me, even though they're more or less the same, driven by the same things in a lot of ways.
My favorite oh, go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, we kind of got to start wrapping up here, but I did want to touch on the ending before we do that, because I think it's important. The collapsing of the house, like, at this point, Carrie is essentially like crucified her mother. She's bleeding out on the kitchen floor. The house starts collapsing on top of them. Like, how do you guys interpret that? Like the house falling in. Why is that happening, do you think?
Well, Justin, you answer that. It's your first time seeing it. I want to get your
I
bald
really
impression.
like this ending.
Yeah.
I'm glad you like brought it to the ending, because I didn't really like it. Especially like the house collapsing on itself. Like the mom dies and Carrie, obviously, I assume she has like some kind of break like she does at the school. You know, this is the last person. I felt like even after everything she's been through with her mom, when everything goes south, the one person she turns to, like, please just hold me, mom, please show me some sort of like motherly support or whatever. Like, she's pretty much just like begging her mom to love her and just show her some basic sympathy. And instead she tries to kill her, and she in turn is like forced to kill her mom, which we've seen that I got the impression too that it wasn't completely under her control. I don't think she's being like, all right, this fire hose here, you know. I think it's like it makes it seem like it's a reactionary thing. Almost
Like
everything that she
thing.
moves with her mind has to do with like her emotion, like dry, like it seems. So when you kill your mom after you've begged her to love you and you've had the night you've had, I assume she just brought down the house on herself.
Bringing
Brought
down the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching it this time, and I mean, I'm sure I'm not telling any old fans of this movie anything they haven't noticed already, but like, she comes to her mom. Her mom was right about everything, right? Her mom has been right about everything. She comes to her mom. She just wants the sympathy and a chance to relieve her transgressions and be loved by the one person who was ever truthful to her. And that person literally stabs her in the back. And her reaction is a fight or flight response to this person that has also abused her for years, to crucify her in the manner perfectly symmetrical to the crucifix that she has prayed to in her little hovel. And when she finally comes back to her senses and sees what she's done, again, her mom was fucking right. She was sitting there and her babbling, telling her that I should have aborted you, I should have killed you when I had the chance, that sort of shit. You're an evil child. You're a product of sin. You're a sin. You're a demon. Like, and she's now murdered her mother and crucified her. Like, that is the ultimate I've become the monster moment. I saw that as like super impactful, especially this time around, because it was like just hitting me extra hard how much that feels like everything that's happened to this girl, it led to all of this moment, and it really is just this fucking Aurora Boreas of pain. And the only option that she sees at that point is to bring down her own life and just go down with the goddamn ship, because she's still conflicted. She still, because she thinks her mom was right about everything, she thinks, shit, I am a demon, I have to die. Like, that's how I see it anyway.
I just want to add one thing to what you mentioned there, Randy. I did, through research, I didn't know this on my own, but apparently that's not a crucifix. It's a statue of Saint Sebastian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Who I guess was patron saint of archers and athletes, but also of like martyrs, which makes sense for the mother. Anyway,
fucked up crucifix.
Yeah, that was the thing that I saw. Patron saint of I looked him up too. Patron saint of archers and athletes, and of those who desire a saintly death, which would be appropriate for the way her mom goes out, because she thinks she's like getting rid of the
probably
evil
why she
in the
smiles,
world.
Actually. That's
a
good point.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was
Nicole,
good trivia, Bob.
Yeah. Nicole, take it.
Basically everything you guys have already said is my interpretation of the ending as well. It's just the physical embodiment of her emotion and her grief kind of just closing in. But also, fun fact, in the book, there are times when rocks rain from the sky, and it happens when she is born, I think. And then I believe that is how they die in the book. Is her emotions bring rocks down onto the house, and it like that's what causes the house to collapse. And so I'm sure that would have been quite the bizarre choice in this movie. And I also am sure it would have been difficult to do. So I wonder if just practically that's how they chose to interpret that scene. So in that regard, I think it works pretty well. But also you might remember if I know you guys have all seen Hill House. There's a scene where the mom is talking about how one time when she was a child, it was after her dad died, and she comes home and she's crying, and she cried so much that rocks rained down onto the house. And so I always assumed, because Mike Flanagan is a big Stephen King fan, that was his little homage to Carrie.
Nice. Yeah.
So due to Rob's trivia, they actually shot that scene where the rocks do come down at the beginning and the end, but apparently it looked like rain and didn't look good. And so they scrapped that idea. Yeah.
This
So,
looks
good trivia, Bob.
I think that's a cool idea. Like the idea of her being born she was born out of sin. So in the book, she's basically being stoned at birth, and also like her mother and her father. And it makes sense that they would go out being stoned because she just slays.
Hell yeah, man.
Her entire
420.
soul. Stoned, brother. I think I interpret the ending as it is in the movie, though, as she has lost complete control. She kills her mother for sure, but when the house starts falling in on itself, she grabs her mother and drags her into her prayer closet as if to try and protect herself and maybe her mother if she's not quite dead yet. It seems like what's happening is sort of out of her control at that point, which makes sense because I believe that's the case at prom as well. She's sort of just reacting like we've already discussed. But
I don't see it that way.
Yeah, I think it's open for interpretation for sure. Let's go ahead and rate this bad boy. If you guys have any other points you want to make, feel free to do so. But out of 5, Nicole, as our guest, would you please kick us off? How would you rate Carrie?
Okay. So I really love just the look and feel of this movie. Kind of like I talked about at the beginning, we have this soft haze that's sort of used throughout that I think is really beautiful. The color palette is really gorgeous. Sometimes it's kind of soft and earthy, and then when we get to prom, we've got these bright colors, and it's always just really gorgeous. Of course, it's De Palma. He's got so much style. And then the visuals paired with the score, I think, really give the whole film a unique tone. That opening theme, when they are all in the bathroom together, that's the main theme of Carrie, is so gorgeous, and it's kind of sweet and kind of hopeful, but then it also gets a little sad at times. And then the theme that plays anytime her mom is in the picture is super creepy. So I just find it really interesting how the score goes from hopeful to terrifying kind of seamlessly, and it works so well. It just kind of sets a nice kind of baseline for the whole movie. Even though it's obviously super 70s, I think somehow it manages to feel classic and, to me, timeless. Like I said, I grew up with this movie in the 90s, and I never thought this movie's so old. And even watching it now, it feels timeless. I already mentioned I really love the characters. I find them all very interesting. Would love to know more about all of them. We talked about Mrs. White being amazing, Tommy and Sue, love. And another note on the characters is, to me, they don't quite feel like typical high school stereotypes, even though that's almost exactly what they are. One of my pet peeves with newer horror, especially slashers, is that you don't care about the characters as much, and they all just feel like, I'm here to fulfill a certain role and then get killed off at a certain point. But the older movies from the 80s and especially the 70s, I feel like a lot of times the teenagers do feel more real, they feel more established, and we actually want to root for them. And I think that Carrie is a prime example of that. So overall, I mean, it is a classic. I don't really have much to criticize about this movie. I do think that there are some cheesy moments. I think the acting is cheesy at some point. But as I already said, that at some points that sort of plays into the charm for me. So, also, I do not think that a better adaptation of this story it will ever exist. I think this will always be the best. And for all of those reasons, I think I have to give it a 5.
All right, a 5 from Nicole. Juice, why don't you go next? How you feel?
All right. I really liked watching this film for the first time. Some just little notes that I made that I didn't touch on. There was when the mom goes to that woman's house, she says, these are godless times. And the mom says, I'll drink to that. I love this. Like, killed me. I don't know. It was just a nice little touch. Also, touching on the tuxedos and everything, the fucking bow ties in this film are ginormous. That was cracking me up. And again, I'm just not a big 70s guy. And I was watching this film, I was like, even though this film is great, anytime I watch a film from the 70s, especially focusing on teenagers, I'm always like, this looks like the worst fucking decade to be a teenager every time, or just to live through. I just like the 70s look terrible to me. There was one more thing I wanted to touch on before when we were talking about the mom. Is my favorite scene from the mom was more about just the kind of relationship too, was when she's kind of found out, where she starts to panic that Carrie is actually going to the prom, where the kind of facade melts away a little bit and she realizes that she doesn't have control, that her daughter is leaving her and stuff, because it echoes like almost kind of a real relationship that people feel, oh, my kid's growing up, they're going to prom. Oh, and you normally treat it with like love and, some kind of sympathy and stuff. It was interesting to see that melt away. And also just kind of the twist reveal of, dad left you. Everybody knows that he just went with another woman and stuff like that. And to see that this woman too, we later find out, she claimed she was raped or whatever, is part of a trauma too, like the way she used to be like a normal person, and her reaction to maybe getting raped and then left and stuff like that is to just completely shut herself up, and like that's really tragic in its own self. And so I like the nuance that was going on there. She's not this over oppressive mother. She's terrible and she's a great villain, she does a great job with the acting, but like I like those little twists, and they didn't have to like drive it home. She's like, yeah, everyone knows that dad left you, mom, or whatever. So I really like that scene a lot. That fucking Saint Sebastian statue, horrific. Like the what they create around this girl, like every moment I felt so bad. Even, man, y'all were talking about the mom being the best actress or whatever, dude. No, to me, the girl who plays Carrie, what's her name? Sissy, yeah,
Sassy,
okay.
Sassy
Sporkek.
Sissy.
She, the moment when like the coach takes her into the bathroom, she's like, "Oh, pull your hair back a little bit. Oh, there's a pretty girl. Look up." Man, my heart was breaking. She does a phenomenal job going from meek and just beaten down to kind of being a little strong when she's standing up to her mom, to her crazy eyes and like the position she puts her body in and shit. Amazing. It was just blowing me away. Where I did have critiques for this film though, I don't like the weight that's put on Sue and Tommy. I don't think it's necessarily deserved. I think the guy who played Tommy did a good job, because I was with Nicole. I was like, this feels like a good guy, but I don't really know what's going on here. I have a problem with the whole like emotional manipulation thing. I'm like, oh, this is going to play out fine, and him kissing her, and maybe a rewatch would help that a little bit. Also, a couple things. I was a little let down with the prom scene, where shit goes crazy, and that could just be cultural expectations of, like, I know like that's the scene or whatever, but when it happened, I liked the split screen and stuff, but overall it was just like, oh, that felt a little underwhelming. And then also the car flip scene was rough. That does not hold up well. It just doesn't. I was like, and for those characters to kind of go out like that, like, oh, we're just gonna hit her with our car. It's like, I don't know. I just didn't like that too much. So the thing is like Carrie and her mom were amazing. Tommy was interesting, but like Sue and the others, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not as sold. And the overall plot kind of bothers me with like her manipulation and stuff like that. So I'm going to end it with a 4+. I looked, all the girls, even though they're playing 16-year-old, 26, 27-year-old. So I'm giving half star for those yabos. That's going to end it at a 4.5.
All
Very
right.
impressed. We're very impressed with your research.
Soju given 4.5 for underage dirty pillows on the record.
Robert, Booby, why
Yeah.
don't you
Isn't my friend?
why don't you hit us with your score for Carrie?
Yeah, so I think this movie's playing with a lot of really fantastic themes. I think one that we didn't totally touch on is like just sort of like the general like hush hush regarding like women's menstruation in society. It's just not something that's like openly discussed, and I think the mother in this movie takes it to the extreme where she completely keeps it from her daughter to the point where she experienced it. She has no idea what's happening. Bullying, I think, is obviously a main theme in this movie. It's ultimately what turns Carrie into I guess the bad guy, even though you're still rooting for her, but she is like a mass murderer by the end of this movie, which is kind of hard to like say, oh, you know what, I completely understand, but like you kind of do, because she's done so damn dirty. It's definitely playing around with the concept of like, you know, sexuality and Christianity. I also like the fact that this movie is like completely about women. It like, even to the point where the male characters in this movie only exist to do what the women ask of them to do. Like, they don't really have any agency to themselves. Like Tommy and Billy just do what the girlfriends ask them to do. Even the principal at the beginning of the movie, when Carrie is taken in there by the gym coach, he just like doesn't really want to hear about it, and he keeps calling her Cassie and is like kind of oblivious to anything and everything. And the coach is really like saying Carrie needs to go home for the rest of the day. Carrie needs to be excused for the next 3 days. She can just take it easy and like recoup from the trauma she's just experienced. And the principal's just like, yeah, okay, I'll totally sign off. That's fine. Like the men are just like non-characters almost, except for like, I guess Billy's just a complete fucking dick.
Oh.
And Tommy's like kind of a nice guy, but maybe not. I don't know.
Bob, bring in the female perspective.
Dude.
No.
Yeah, you're forgetting about the much loved character of her English teacher, played by one of the Cuckoo's Nest guys,
Yes.
acting absolutely insane for no reason.
How could I forget? Anyway, I dig all that. I do think the opening sequence is just like it's too much, man. They linger way too much. It bothers me. I think the characters, as we've already mentioned, are just like too extreme. Like Chris and Billy are like too fucking evil, and Sue and Tommy are like too nice, or at least they're trying to be too nice, even though what they're doing is somewhat questionable. Her mother is just like so extremely religious. She's willing to murder her daughter. Like everybody's just like ramped up. But like ultimately, I think it does make for a more entertaining movie. So I'm sort of conflicted in that, being like positive or negative. And also just like people are slapped left and right in this. Is that just like a thing that was cool in the 70s? Like corporal punishment in public school was like totally
like
fucking fine.
Smoking
blew my
weed,
mind.
low ride, and smacking people in the face. Those are like the three hottest topics.
Simpler times. I do really love this movie, but I don't think it's a perfect film. I think I'm gonna land it at a 4.5, same as Juice. Randy, how do you feel about Carrie?
Well, I mean, I do have some critiques as well. The thing with Sue and
Tommy.
On the man. Tommy, thank you. The two of them like hatching this little scheme, like even though for years, like it's gotten so to the point where I don't even see it as like anything other than them being like altruistic. Looking at it that way is problematic, like Justin said, because it leads you to believe that they're still lying to her and emotionally manipulating her, and that does bother me. But to my mind, it's you can chalk it up to, and I choose to, I guess, chalk it up to naivety and hubris of being a kid. You know, these are people that are learning how to treat people right as a well functioning adult might, but they're not there. You know, they're not there. I can live with that, especially because to me that enriches the coach character quite a bit, and that adds so much to the prom scene where Carrie's freaking out, where literally the coach in herself actually causes the pig's blood to drop in her own way by stopping Sue from stopping it based on her own suspicions. So it's just this like perfect storm of people, good intentioned people, all being vexed by the one or two evil motherfuckers in the room, and the most sheltered among them being totally ill-equipped to handle that and therefore causing havoc. I don't know, all that shit just really, really works for me. But what doesn't work for me is, you know, Nicole, you said this movie strikes you as timeless. I could not disagree more. This is an excessively 70s film to me, not just in style, like in like dress and hairstyles and things like that, but in filmmaking style. Like you don't see movies that do some of these things anymore. I mean, not that I'm complaining necessarily, but like when it comes to the scenes of the slice of life stuff, it feels so dated as to feel like I can understand the timelessness of the story itself, but the timelessness of the aesthetic is not there for me. Even like you mentioned, the soft focus, that's kind of like a 40s thing. Like that's like showing women in soft focus so that they're softens their features and makes them more beautiful or whatever. That's an old technique. And so
A nice
even that,
blurry woman. That's what I want.
I like a woman that's not exactly in 2020, you know? No, but I don't know. I that's like that for me. Even as a kid, I was like, man, this dude looks like he's wearing a poodle for a head. Like, what is this?
Oh man, I love his hair.
His hair freaks me out. And also that dude has he has zero lip. There's no lip there. He's just got a line. It's weird. I don't know if you noticed that. But anyway, so yeah, all that stuff. But I love the themes of this movie. Like we talked about a bunch of them. But one thing that I want to hit again is cyclical trauma. Like this Carrie White and the resulting trauma is a result of her mother hating herself and her own sexuality to the point where I don't know, where her daughter is so damaged and by virtue of being removed from that world. But at the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, kind of like in a distant second for villain, you have Chris, who is abusing her sexuality. So it's making this big case that sexuality, specifically female sexuality, is neither evil nor good. It's a fact of life that you cannot repress, and you also need to keep in check and monitor for yourself. And that's true of everyone, I think. If you don't do that, then society fucking breaks down. So please check yourself, people. Anyway, all that to say, this movie's really rich in all this shit. I love this movie. I really think every time I see it, I get something new out of it. I notice something different. And watching people experience it for the first time, talking to people like Justin who's experienced it for the first time, it adds to the conversation. It's a self-propagating film in that way. I think it deserves its classic status in every sense, and I don't think that I have enough negative to really outdo both my love of it and my feeling that it is of the highest quality for the most part. So for me, it's a 5.
All right, with Randy's 5, that's going to put our aggregate at a 4.75. Let's go ahead and jump into our Rotten Tomatoes segment, see what the critics and users think about Carrie.
Certified.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Rotten Tomatoes segment of the show. And for those who are new, the way this works is as such. I'm going to give these folks the chance to guess within the best of their abilities between 0 and 100% what the aggregate score for Carrie is on RottenTomatoes.com. So remember, this is percentage of positive reviews, not a grade of the movie. So we're going to start with the critics score here. There are 67 reviews listed for an older movie. That's pretty good, I think. why don't we start with Nicole? It's your guesting tonight. Why don't we start with you? What do you think that the 67 critics thought of this film?
Oh, it's always so hard with these classic movies. So hard. Let's do 85.
85, the year of our Lord Marty McFly. Juice, why don't we go to you next? What do you think that the critic score is for this?
Ooh, I'm gonna shoot for the high end and say 90.
90. All right. Bob?
I'm gonna go. I think this is crazy high. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say something like truly negative about this movie. So I'm gonna go like a 98.
98 degrees. Let me do some brain math in here. Okay. Soju's going to take it here. Going to take it by a schmeage. It's a 93%. 93.
Schmeage. A
90.
schmeage.
Can I go ahead and request my hell yeet?
All right. The critic consensus is as follows. Carrie is a horrifying look at supernatural powers, high school cruelty, and teen angst, and it brings us one of the most memorable and disturbing prom scenes in history. It's a little rote, but it's fine. That works.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I'm
well,
surprised the reviews are so low, honestly.
Well,
Like
we'll
that
find a
overall
negative one
numbers,
here in a minute and see what they have
the
to say
overall
about it.
like 67 or whatever you said.
Oh, well, I mean, it's just an older film. I don't know if people bother like reviewing movies like
Everybody
movies
does.
like Carrie. It's like,
We bother, but nobody
who needs to
else
be?
does.
Yeah, I mean, because we don't give a fuck. And nobody's asking us for our Rotten Tomatoes credentials, I promise you. Let's go to the audience score. There are 250,000 plus ratings for this film. So those are the folks reviewing. We'll start with Bob this time. What do you think that the 250,000 people thought of this movie?
Yeah, the sheer number of reviews I think is going to drive the average down a little bit. I'm going to go within 82.
82. Going with the off numbers. I'm interested in that. All right. Let's go with you, Juice. You're gonna come in now and give me your review.
I'm gonna keep the faith and give a 90.
90. All right, keeping the faith. Gotta have faith, as George Michael once said. All right, Nicole, round
Fred
us out.
Durst
What do you think
said that, actually.
No, he did not. He
I
said, gotta have.
I think I'm gonna go higher for the audience. I'm gonna go with 95.
95 percentile. All right. Quick tally here. I do believe I don't need a tally actually. This is going to Bob. Bob's gonna take this one. It's lower though than you think. It's 77%.
Oh,
77%.
Oh,
Wrong with people.
Dude, you gotta understand.
What's wrong with y'all?
This is a big movie that was around at the time when Rotten Tomatoes was letting just about anybody and their little tiny dick review this thing. And so there's probably a bunch of 13-year-olds who are like, this is bullshit. And then probably some 35-year-olds are like, this is bullshit. So that's my assumption.
Some people's children, I tell you what.
Not mine. Let's read a negative review real quick, just because sometimes they're funny and it might be enlightening on this one. In this case, all right. This person wrote, "The acting takes me out of the movie. There's just some weird stuff going on here."
I mean, that's true. There is some weird stuff.
And we don't have Rotten Tomatoes credentials.
Oh boy.
Wait a minute. Powers don't exist.
There's really something strange going on here.
I'm starting to think that maybe this Carrie girl's a little weird.
That's terrible. That's like the worst review I've heard. There's really some strange stuff going on in this horror film.
That was a first draft that just somehow made it in. Yeah, so that's our Rotten Tomatoes segment. I hope you guys enjoyed that. There you go.
All right, let's go ahead and jump over into some trivia.
It's totally time for trivia.
Bob, you gave me some good trivia, but that means that I can't make a cool game out of it. So, I mean, where does that leave us?
Do your worst.
We could play the game.
Well, yeah, that's true. If I can, I will, and I'll just exclude Bob. So the book that Carrie reads in the library, The Secret Science Behind Miracles, is a real book, and it's written by Max Freedom. Oh, Freedom Long.
Max, that's
Wow.
that sounds like the new novel from Tucker Carlson or some
Max
shit.
Freedom. It was written in 1948. The telekinesis definition from the book that Carrie reads is actually in the real book. In real life, old Sissy was homecoming queen, so she had some experience there. Yeah. Let's see. The prom scene took over 2 weeks to shoot and required a total of 35 takes. We talked about the ending of the movie is different than the ending from the novel, and in fact, Stephen King said that he liked the ending in the movie better than his own ending in the book. So there you go.
He's not famous for good endings.
Yeah.
I mean, he addresses that one.
So the camera shot that we talked about at the prom scene where they're spinning around, it was achieved by placing the actors on a platform that was spinning in one direction while the camera was being dollied in the opposite direction. That shit was wild. I like that shot a lot, but I was sickening. It was sickening.
It was a great effect. God, I love that shot.
So when Sissy was preparing for her character, she isolated herself from the rest of the ensemble, decorated her dressing room with heavy religious icons, and studied Gustave Doré's Illustrated Bible. Am I saying that right? I don't know. Illustrated Bible. She studied the body language of people being stoned for their sins, starting or ending every scene in one of those positions. So I actually was watching an interview with Sissy where she was talking about that, and they're showing some of the images, and it's one of those it's like religious, it's like a illustrated Bible, I guess, and the people, they were like, oh, like just crazy poses, but they would show like little scenes where she would end or start a scene in those poses. There was one where it was very distinct to me when she was covered in blood and she was going back into the house, and her body was just very rigid, her hand was like stuck out. I was like, this looks wild, but I didn't know that at the time. So I think she did a really, really great job with that. Method actress, she's really getting into it. Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune gave this film 2.5 stars out of 4 and called it a crude shocker with a little style, praising the strong performances, but saying that the movie falls apart during the climax, which he described as crude and sloppy. Damn. The only thing sloppy was that.
God damn it, Ralph, get out of here.
Yeah, that flip scene of the car. That was, I don't know about that. The final scene, this was cool. The final scene in which Sue reaches towards Carrie's grave. It was shot backwards to give it a dreamlike quality. And this scene was inspired by the final scene in Deliverance, which we covered, and I cannot remember. I was trying to think about that, and I was like, I don't know what that was.
Same.
Yeah. I don't know.
Same.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know, man. The whole like. Oh wait, there was something. Wasn't it something like in a hospital or something? I don't remember. But anyway,
I really have no idea.
The whole thing, like with her hand coming out, like that was like the last shock of the movie thing. Like that became a thing because of this movie, is my understanding.
So I'll do one more. We talked about it a little bit, but okay. So a wraparound segment at the beginning and end of the film was scripted and filmed, which featured the White's house being pummeled by stones that hailed from the sky. The opening scene was filmed as planned, though on celluloid, the tiny pebbles looked like rainwater. A mechanical malfunction botched filming the night when the model of the White's home was set to be destroyed by stones, so the filmmakers burned it down instead and deleted the scenes with the stones altogether. The original opening scene is presumed lost. So there you go. Yeah. Good trivia, Bob.
Hey, thanks for reading it.
You did good. No problem.
Let's go ahead and jump into our Cooter of the Week.
Straight
Juice, what's Cooter and why are we hunting him?
Thanks for asking, Bob. Cooter's a character type and a straight chillin' exclusive. Cooter must hit 3 of these 5 points to be considered Cooter. We want a Cooter with the most points. Last time, Nicole nailed all 5 points. I want to see if she can do it again. Nicole, what are the 5 points of Cooterdom here at Straight Chillin'?
Okay. Smug arrogance, look and attire, sexual deviance, overall patheticness. Did I say manipulation already?
I
Don't think so.
I don't
Okay,
think so.
well,
I
there
think
you
that
go
was
then.
the
Nailed
fifth one. Yeah. Nailed it. So yes, those are the 5 points. Who wants to nominate a Cooter this week? I think we've got a few
Oof.
choices, in my
I
opinion.
think we've got a King Cooter in this movie.
You do. Well,
I'm
Randy?
sniffing out.
Oh.
I'm rooting him out. I'm truffle pigging that bitch right out of his fucking Trans Am.
Oh,
Talking
smell him?
Travolta.
You smell
you
him?
going, Billy?
You smell Johnny? You smell Johnny T?
I
Boy
would
is
have
a
said
goddamn
Chris,
Cooter.
actually. Well,
I
go
was
ahead. Go
leaning
ahead.
between
I
the
think
two as
it might
well,
be
yeah.
a power couple. It might be a power
Yeah.
couple situation, but I think that, like, Rob, you had the most to say about this character already. I want to hear you make this argument for me because I think you've got it.
Well, I think, well, I don't know, man. I don't think Billy does much of anything on his own free will, other than like be kind of a piece of shit. So, like, I don't know that he's really manipulating anybody. I don't think he can really get the attire. I don't think he can really get the sexual deviance. Maybe arrogance and patheticness. I would give him that. I would give the sexual deviance to Chris.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think they both get it for the same act.
Yeah.
The man
Maybe so.
killed a fucking pig because he got a blowjob.
I think that's
Not a good
pathetic.
reason to kill a pig.
I don't
I'm
know.
just gonna point that out. There's
It's-
that, and then also like smug arrogance, certainly manipulation. Like he's part of this whole fucking like ring of like dickhead pig murdering fucks.
Right.
The drinking and the driving and all that shit. Like that's some smug ass shit. The look and attire. I don't know. To me, everybody in this movie kind of looks fucked up in their look and attire. So maybe I'm a bad
It's
judge.
the 70s. He fits
I
right
know
in.
it's fucked up.
Yeah.
Fits right in.
I don't know. I would give him some kind of sexual deviancy. I don't know where it fits, but just his like him smacking her around and like
That's
and-
pathetic to me.
and also
Yeah,
making
yeah.
the statement of like, you're fucked up. I know you're fucked up. And also I know you only like me because I'm a stupid bag of rocks. I mean, pretty much is like I know
I don't remember
Yeah.
that. Okay.
They're-
Damn.
They are definitely getting turned on by like degrading each other.
yeah.
God.
There's some real weird
There's some
push
real
and
negging
pull
going on
happening
here.
there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very
All right,
strange.
so-
They're on their way to a
let's-
BDSM swingers lifestyle.
You want to, which there's nothing wrong with that. No king shaming. Do you want to go
No,
ahead and
not at all.
nominate
As long as they're not a
nominate
piece of shit.
a Cooter couple then, shall we?
I
think-
yeah, we can.
Yeah. Between the two of them, there's absolutely some strong Cooter vibes going. The only one that I guess I will abstain from, and you guys are telling me no on, is the look and attire. But
No,
know.
Randy.
So
No.
so Chris totally reminds me of the sister from that 70s show. Did anybody else get that?
yeah, I could. Yeah, well,
They
because they
look
I
got
can
the
see it.
pomposity,
similar.
sort of like
yeah.
Yeah.
And like just they both suck.
they both suck.
Right.
Also,
Right.
I don't know what kind of crazy blowjob she was giving because she was going down, but the whole time she was saying Billy, Billy, and I was like, wait,
Having a full-on conversation.
yeah.
And then she's like,
hate Carrie.
I hate Carrie
I was
White.
like, this sounds like
Movie
the,
magic.
this sounds like the worst blowjob I've ever.
I don't know that would really be setting the mood for me. Like, who are you talking? You hate some girl at school? What? I don't know.
I guess
I don't
that
know. I'm
says
surprised
that
he didn't.
he doesn't.
He says
go to
what?
school
But I'm surprised he
too.
didn't go like meh.
So I
Shut
guess
up.
he's older. He's not
I
in
think
high
he-
school.
Yeah, I guess he's a little bit old. I think he just says like, "Who's that?"
Yeah, I think he
Yeah.
does too.
Anybody else
That's
though,
actually
or are
pretty
they
funny.
gonna? Yeah,
Those are some good ones. I think
Um,
Ball Cap might like PJ Soul's character
PJ Souls.
is at
Who?
least
Oh, yeah.
the girl with the
Now-
ball
Yeah,
cap.
yeah.
She hits a little more on look and attire because
Yeah.
yeah, her pigtails and her ball cap are like,
At the
little strange.
prom. Who you trying to
Yeah.
kid?
Did
Got
you
her
Who you
hair
notice?
trying to
done and then
kid?
put a hat on.
Have some
I don't know.
respect for the
Did-
institution of prom.
I was gonna say, did you notice when she was getting her hair done, it was underneath one of those big perm domes or whatever, and she had the hat on top of the dome?
Oh,
the
I
hat's
didn't notice
always
Didn't
that.
notice
there.
that. That's pretty
That's
Yeah.
cute.
I don't know. But she's
Yeah.
also the one that bursts out laughing when fucking Tommy gets his head clocked, and I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah, that's
Fuck
rough.
you.
That's pretty rough.
Oh, poor Tommy.
She's also
Poor
part of the
little
manipulation. She drops the ballots in a trash can.
Yeah, they did that in the worst way.
She got looking at sexual deviance. I don't know about that. We didn't really get a whole lot of inkling of that.
Yeah.
I guess you could. I guess you could say anybody who participated in the "plug it up" chant.
Yeah.
Might
Indict
be-
the whole locker room.
Yeah. But,
Like Bob over
pathetic.
here.
Just said it once. I had to relay the plot. I think we got a
Okay.
cooter power couple. I think it's pretty safe.
I think
to
that's
say.
fair. That's fair.
All right, we're giving it to Chris and Billy because they suck. Let's go ahead and wrap the show up with what we've been watching.
Hey, gang, what you been watching?
Randy, why don't you kick us off with what you've been watching?
Oh man, I have watched almost nothing this week. I started a new job this week, and I've been just swamped dealing with everything you got to do at the beginning of a new job.
Quit.
And oh, okay. Is the
Quit your new
Patreon money
job,
jumping
Randy.
up and I didn't know it?
Oh, you
um,
know it.
Tell you what, once we start getting salary numbers in the Patreon, I'll do just that. Yeah. So I haven't watched, aside from that one first time viewing of Carrie that I watched on YouTube by Alana. Hold on, I want to make sure I'm plugged this person. Alonda Parker. I only got a chance to watch VHS 94, which is certainly one of the better entries into that franchise, I would say. It's still spotty quality, they all are. But I think aside from the first one, it has the best success rate. I did not like the wraparound for that movie though at all.
It's always so hard to get those right, man. Like none of them
Yeah.
are really great.
But they're not, but like especially in this one, the acting was a real problem for me in that one. But
Yeah.
the first, I would say 2, and then maybe even the last segments. I think there were 4 outside of the wraparound, right?
Right. Yeah.
Only really
4.
like the third one was didn't really hit me at all. I didn't like that one.
Really? The fourth
Yeah.
one was the lackluster bits. I like the.
Oh, really?
the
I
first
like
3.
that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a cool idea.
Yeah, I liked. It was a great idea, and I thought it was a little catharsis going on in that one for me. But,
Yeah, maybe.
yeah. That's all I got a chance to watch this week, though. So I'm sorry to say I got nothing else.
All right, no worries. Nicole, what have you been watching?
So of course, spooky season, I've been watching lots of stuff, but in the past week and a half, I haven't watched hardly anything because we have been traveling and we've been visiting with friends and I have been going out almost every night. So, I haven't been like viewing much. But I have gone to some spooky events, so I will talk about those instead. A couple weekends ago, we went with some friends of ours to a pop-up horror bar in a nearby city at a pinball bar. And so they brought in a bunch of specialty pinball machines that are horror themed. So we had Nightmare on Elm Street, we had Tales from the Crypt, we had what else did we have? There was a Phantom of the Opera one that was really cool. Just lots of cool stuff. And they had all of the, the dry ice drinks and the, glowing drinks, stuff I would never in a million years normally order. I was like, I want the fruitiest, brightest drink you can give me.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and it was a blast. Like every booth had its own theme. So there was like a Friday the 13th theme. We sat in the Beetlejuice theme. There was like a Mad Science theme, and they were all really, really good. Whoever put this thing together just knew what they were doing, and it was an absolute blast.
That sounds awesome.
And we went on a weeknight, so it wasn't too crowded. We kind of was plenty of room to move around and didn't take forever to get drinks. So that was a blast, and we will be doing that next year as well. And then this past weekend, we got to go to Halloween Horror Nights. And we decided kind of last minute because we were going to go to Spooky Empire. And then I decided there's not enough people there that I want to meet to make it worth it. So let's do Halloween Horror Nights instead. Have to say, it was not the best time. Because we went on a Saturday. And yeah, and it was on the 24th. So it's late in October on a weekend. We've never done that. We've always gone on weeknights. But just because of the way the trip fell, we had to do it on that day. And so we were like, oh, you know, we're mentally prepared. We know it's going to be crowded. Like, we know lines are going to be longer. It'll be fine. It was not fine. We also were like jet lagged from 2 days of nonstop driving. So I think we overestimated our energy levels. Speaking of being crusty, it's like, oh, we're in our late 30s trying to stay at Halloween Horror Nights till 2 a.m. It's not happening.
It just means I've more shit I gotta do now.
So yeah, we still had fun though. Like, I don't want to say we didn't have any fun. Like, we did 4 houses, which is a little under half because there were 10 this year. We didn't get to do any rides because the lines were just too long. So we did Haunting of Hill House, which was okay. I would like for it to have been better. But also we were in kind of a weird spot in the line where like all the characters kept coming out either right before or right after us. So I feel like we missed.
That's the ideal spot to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know to some extent, because then you get to actually like look around a little bit more, which is always nice. But so we did that one, and then I think my favorite one of the ones we did was there's one with like puppets, and it was pretty cool. Of course, I mean puppets are always a good scare, but there was one room in particular that was just like racks of costumes. And I had never seen a room quite like that. So you're kind of like trying to move through this room and it's really hard to tell where you're at. And you just know somebody's going to pop out of those costumes at any moment. So that one was definitely my favorite. Nice. So yeah, I don't want to be too down on the event because I feel like I didn't experience enough of it to like say whether it was a really good event or not. But anyway, I am releasing an episode about that tomorrow. So by the time this goes live, there will be an episode in my feed about it. So if you want to hear more, go listen.
Nice.
Rigatoni.
Hell yeah.
Perfect. Juice, what you been watching?
Dude, the last week before Halloween, so I've been knocking out all the classics. I'm talking Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
I'm talking Over the Garden Wall.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Trick or
Oh.
Treat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Nothing new. I've gotten to the point in my Halloween life where I watched Titan or
Halloween
whatever.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My Halloween life where I'm not really watching a lot of new Halloween films or like different. I watch like the same shit every year. Halloween 1, Halloween 2, Trick or Treat, Over the Garden Wall, you know. I haven't got to watch Ghost Watch this year. I don't know if I will. I really want to.
There's nowhere to find it.
Dude,
I've looked.
You told me that before and I found
I'm on. Well, I guess that's true. But I have a DVD, but I don't have a region-free player. It's been driving me nuts.
I found it before. If I can find that link again, I remember what website it's on. I'll send it to you because I posted this like I think last year because the people had the same problem. So I'll try to find it for you. And so yeah, mainly just all the classics. Nothing new except that that new French film, which we talked about last time. Oh, we didn't talk about it. No, what is Titan or Titan, whatever. So I watched that. Scooby-Doo. I watched Scooby-Doo, which we'll be covering soon.
The film, yes.
The original, 2002. So we'll be
to the sequel before we do that
next week. Yeah, I should
do it.
So that's all the stuff I've been watching, all the staples for my Halloween month. Rob, what you been watching, my guy?
Man, I hit some of the classics. I had to watch Beavis and Butthead's Butt-O-Ween, which is hilarious and very, very stupid. I also had to revisit Pete and Pete's Halloweenies episode because it's a fucking classic.
The Endless
that is
Mike saga.
the Endless Mike, man. That shit is on YouTube, by
He's
the way.
the
if you're
Frieza
curious.
of that show.
He is. He never ends. He literally never ends.
The man just won't end.
I also finally got around to watching The Night House, which is something I've been wanting to see for quite some time. Solid little movie. Basically about a woman who loses her husband, and she's dealing with the grief of that, and she thinks that maybe, just maybe, he's haunting her house. That's sort of like a spoiler-free synopsis there. I think it's worth your time. It's a solid movie. It's probably one of the better movies I've seen this year as far as new horror releases go. And I think it's on VOD and it's on Blu-ray, pretty easy to find. Yeah, it's pretty good though. Outside of that, this past weekend, I went over to Spooky Empire with some friends, and I met that producer of Jack-O, Fred Olin Ray. He was there signing autographs. I got him to sign my Jack-O DVD, and I talked to him for a little while. And if you guys are listening, you haven't listened to our review of Jack-O from a few weeks ago, that commentary between like the director and the producer is like literally the best commentary I've ever heard. They like completely eviscerate each other by the end of it, and it like their relationship completely falls apart. It is insane. It is a crazy thing to listen to, and I highly recommend it. But I didn't want to like dive right into that like as I was talking to him, but I was like, yeah, I really like Jack-O. It's solid, shot in Florida, which is really cool. And I told him about the podcast, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, you ever do like podcast interviews? He's like, yeah, totally. And I was like, well, hey, here's a sticker, maybe we'll get you on. I was like, yeah, okay. So I don't know, maybe we'll talk to Fred Olin Ray one day. Who knows?
All right.
It was a lot of fun hanging out at Spooky Empire. Saw some cool people, bought some neat things, some amazing cosplay, and I got a jack-o'-lantern tattoo, so you can't go wrong with that. That's pretty much what I've been doing with my life.
Real quick, Randy,
Yo.
just shot you that link for Ghostwatch, my guy. Let's get digital media,
Already?
right, Bob?
Oh,
Already
boy.
found it.
I got my
Just
source.
steal
I
it.
won't be accepting because I don't do things that aren't legal.
Just
It's
steal
actually
it, says
totally
Soju.
legal.
I think it
Uh-huh.
might.
I think it actually
Because
is.
it's like, I own it anyway, so fuck it.
I don't care.
I literally
Um,
own a copy of it. I'm an owner. I've licensed it. It's mine.
Do it,
That's
Randy.
what Randy is going to be watching.
If you need the goods, hit up Juice on the side. A little,
Okay.
let's get
Oh.
digital media black market.
This sounds gross, and I don't like it. But yeah, we don't have any voicemails for Hotline Scream this week. But if you are listening, would like to call and leave a voicemail for next week, you can do so at 904-638-3231. I don't know, you guys got any prompts? Maybe some Halloween related stuff? Good Halloween memories. What'd you do this Halloween? Because we'll be recording after Halloween next episode.
What's your best and or worst Halloween costume you ever did? Tell us that.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I was once Al Borland.
I remember the day we found that out.
As a
I
child,
do too, because it's the day that I
Right?
lost my true name. The day you stopped calling me Andy.
Orland?
You were a kid when you were Al Borland, right?
Oh
Randy?
yeah, I was. It was last
25.
year.
Last year.
I should go as Al Borland again this year.
You should.
I got the
Yeah.
flannel.
That would be
Do
cool.
it. You're halfway there.
I got
Just
the
get
beard
tool
now.
belt,
Like,
and then
actually,
you're
it's not
done.
that far of a stretch. I could do. I could be a Richard Karn type, sure.
Do it. Yeah. Call in. Let us know what you're dressing up as. Was it good? Did it suck? 904-638-3231. Nicole, again, thanks so much for sitting in with us. It's always a pleasure having you on. Why don't you take another moment and tell everybody where they can find your podcast just one more time?
All right, Light and Shadow, a horror podcast. You can find me on all the podcatchers, Facebook and Instagram. It's at Light and Shadow Pod. And you got 2 episodes from me this month. So storytelling episode and a Halloween Horror Nights kind of overview. So please check it out. Follow me. And thanks for having me on again. This is always a blast.
Thanks, Nicole.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're our Stephen King expert. You did Cooge with us, the Cooge.
Cooge.
The Cooge, the Cur.
Oh,
Oh,
Cooge.
so
Yeah.
yeah, you're a big Stephen King fan as well. Is that correct?
Yes, always happy to talk about Stephen King, and if you guys ever end up doing like one of his really ridiculous adaptations, I mean those can be really fun. Like someone needs to ask for Graveyard Shift for the Patreon pick. That could be a ton of fun. So just putting it out into the world.
Maximum Overdrive either.
Yeah.
Maximum Overdrive.
I've heard things mostly
That's the
about
best.
cocaine.
Cocaine fueled. Yeah, that shit's wild.
Is that the one he forgot he wrote?
No,
No.
it's the one he
Directed
directed.
Oh,
And
guess
it's the
he was
one
just-
where he
Real high.
never. Yeah,
Lives
he
were
was stoned all the-
endangered.
Lives are in danger.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the tale. That's the tale.
Not what you want to hear. Yeah, so we're gonna be back next week with a brand new show. As Justin has already alluded to, we're actually going to be talking about another Patreon pick, which is Scooby-Doo from 2002. This was chosen by Logan. Thanks for showing us some love over on Patreon, Logan, and picking a flick for us to review. Slam your eyeballs into Scooby-Doo. Get ready for next week's show. Until then, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at STR8_chilling. On Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast. You can send us an email through our website, straightchillingpodcast.com. And until next week, as always, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.
It's just